Hi, this is Justin with Justin's Web Design. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add, edit, and delete photo galleries. And this is a more advanced version of the part of the slider video that we did, where I also explained that. So we'll get into the site here. I wanted to take a second in the beginning and kind of show you a couple of things that you can do as far as to protect yourself in case something goes wrong. One thing is under settings, and then under backup site, you can create a backup. So the date is automatically included in it, so it just has to have your initials or whatever. Just something that makes sense to you. I don't think you can have spaces in it, but you try it. It just makes a backup so that if I need to restore, I can always get back to the way it is right now. Now to get started, we'll go ahead and add a basic photo gallery. So we do widget. I'm on a blank page here, although you can obviously add a photo gallery to a page that isn't blank. And drag this over. Now you can insert it in the spot that it's already available, or you can drag it down and you can see how it says insert a new row, which would create a new row. Also within the space, if you have other text in here, you can get it to insert it into a column. So those are all options. You want to look at the layout video for more information as far as that goes. Now it comes with some default images in there just to help you get started. I'm going to go ahead and delete those out. Add images. Now you'll have the images from your existing site or ones that you already uploaded before to get started with. And you can search. So if you don't see it here, you can also search. One of the options is free images, so it'll search different sources of free images. So you'd find images in there. For a photo gallery, I can't imagine that would be what you'd be doing most of the time. All images. So if you're going to add them from your computer, which is probably most often what you'll be doing, then let me back up here. You click the plus sign. If you hover over it, you see it says upload images from your computer. And then just select the images that you want to upload. I have most of these on here already, but I'll upload one just to show you. When you upload it, it automatically adds it like this. If you add images from here, so I just clicked on the next plus image here. You can also click on the add image up here. Same thing. Does the same thing. Then you can select images, and you see how it puts a green check there. If you want to uncheck it, you click on the green check and it unchecks it. I'll add that twice here. Just put enough in here so that it makes sense. Done. That's how you add images, deleting them. We started with that. You click on the X. Now, in rare cases, you may want to actually replace an image. So if you click on the image over here, you highlight it, you'll see it shows up over here with the settings and everything. Now, if I click on the image, or if I click replace, it goes to the same thing. Image picker, hit replace, image picker, same thing. So say I want to make it into this one that I've edited before, hit select, changes it to that one. But what you'll do more often is you'll delete the image and just add a new one if you want to replace an image. It's basically the difference of whether you're actually replacing the same image or whether you are adding new images. Now you can also drag these around in order to change the order of the images. Just click and drag them around like that. Now to edit the images themselves within the gallery, right now we're on content, we're on the content tab. I'm going to go ahead and close this for a second and show you what it looks like right now. And there's two ways to get into that where we were. One is to right click and choose edit content. If I click on it, it'll also bring up, click on the gallery at all, anything in the gallery, it will bring up the content by default. Now if I click on the image, you can put a title. You can put a description. You can put in alt text, which should just describe the image. It's more for the search engines and to show up before the image loads. And this is a good place to mention too, you can click these arrows to go back and forth between the images, or you can click over. So if I want to click on this image, I could click here and it'll go to that image. Or if I'm on this image, the puppy image here, the one puppy image, I can click on the arrow and go to the next one and next one. So that's handy if you're adding descriptions for a bunch of different images, so you don't have to keep going back over here. The other thing I should mention is the position. You can see this position here, and I'll explain that here in a minute, why the position matters, because it's going to basically crop the image depending on the shape of the image. So I'll put one in here. I'm not going to do all of them. I just want to notice too, when you click on this, it lights up the eye, which means that it's visible. And then even if you have something typed in, then you could uncheck that or untoggle that eye. So if I untoggle it, you see it has a little X, and see how it's grayed out, then this description won't show up. I'll leave it on for now. There's no save that you need to do here. As soon as you click out of a box, it saves it. Saves as you go along. So close. So now when I highlight over it, you can see it says, the title, and then it has the description under it, like that. But these ones don't have that. You can see that these are square. So this isn't exactly square, so it gets cropped a little bit, but I'll get into that in a minute. So we click on it. If you want to really manually affect the cropping, then you can actually edit the image. So you select one of the images and edit, and that allows you to crop it or do all kinds of things to it. You can look back over the video for images, adding and editing images, for more information about that. One note I would say about that is that when you resize things, then you might end up with them too small. where when you click on them, it doesn't give you a pop-up that's very big. So keep an eye on that. Now we'll go over to design. That's where a lot of this stuff is really affected. In fact, I'm going to pause the video a second. What I did when I paused is I just added some more images so it'd be easier to see what's going on with the layout and stuff, and move the images around so you'd see the titles and stuff. The first box under design, the first section here, and you can see these sections, you can go straight to them, but you can see how it's scrolling when you do that. So the same thing happens if you scroll through the settings, or if you click on them, it's the same thing. So the first thing is just the overall layout, and it has a few different options for layouts. You can play with these different layouts. It has this tiled where I'll close this here so you can see. It uses some math equations to basically resize all the images and make them fit in a mosaic kind of pattern. As tall versions. Here's a different, it's called a tiled format, where they're all different heights, but they're the same width. Here's a different mosaic pattern. Let's see how that looks. It looks like it filled in. I should note, to get back to design, you can click and then click on the tab design, or you can right click and choose design. Edit design. So for the sake of the simplicity, we're going to use the first version, which is kind of a standard layout. But you can see that there's a wide version too. There's a few different versions you can play with. The next layout, and this is only for desktop, is, you know how when you highlight over this, you have the titles show up. On desktops, you can set it up so that it puts the titles underneath. And this is especially, this might cause some problems if you don't have titles and descriptions on all of them, or you don't have titles on all of them. If they don't all match, basically, then it might make them line up kind of weird. But it is important to understand that on a tablet or a smartphone, that's going to be how they are, is the titles show up underneath. Because on a tablet or a smartphone, then there's no hovering. So that's something to keep in mind. And I'll tell you, a lot of times you don't even use titles and descriptions, so that's something to keep in mind. Because without that, even without that, then the main thing that this does is, I'll go into preview mode here. Makes it so when you click on it, you see the image. And when you click on it, it also shows the description under here. So I'll make a note of that again. So if you wanted to have the title on the first screen, and then you wanted to have more information on the second screen, then what goes on the description, that's what would show up in here after you click. Back to the editor. Now the number of columns and the number of visible rows, well, the number of columns defines the shape based on how big the box is that it's in. The more columns you have, the narrower the images are. And then, so we do 5, you can see the images are narrower. You do 6. The images are narrower. Now the height is controlled down here. We'll get to that in a second. But the number of columns determines the width, and then the number of the height of the image determines the height. So that's a little bit of playing around with that to get the kind of shape that you want. And in this format, I will say that's in this format. In the formats that don't have tiles. So if we go back to a different layout, we go into this layout. Then it says number of columns 1 or 2. So if it's 2, then it tries to make, basically makes it 6. So you just have to look at it and see. Or 1. Because it's saying that layout, the layout with a, let's look at this here. So the way it is it says this image is going to be one big image and there's going to be 4 smaller images. One bigger image, 4 smaller images. One big image, 4 smaller images. Even though there aren't totally of 4. That's what it's doing with that layout. So if you do 2, then it ends up being really small. And we'll do one more that I think might be different. The tiled one. Number of columns. So on this one, you might make it 4 or 3. And this would be a useful one if you have a lot of different shaped images. So if you have images where you have a lot of images that are wide and then a lot of images that are tall, then you could use this format to make it so that the images aren't cropped in a way that you're missing information. In order to do that, you'd have to change the order. So you hit the content, you can look and see that actually I'm not really sure why. I guess the way this works is that the it must go short, wide, tall, so it just is alternating. So you can change the order to make it work. So we want the kitty to be on a short one. We can switch it with the shark, and you can see how the kitty is a wider image and the shark is a taller image works better. So it's just about playing around with it. You can see the puppy might work as a taller one, so you'd switch the puppy out with the something that would work better as a wider one. Probably actually this but you want to do it in order because otherwise you mess up everything before it. So you don't want to swap with stuff out of order, although that is one route to go, is to just play with it and see what works better. So I mean, those are advanced layouts. I'm going to mention one more thing about this layout. I'm going to put it back to a more normal layout. Those are nice. They're fun. As far as look, they give a unique look. But I want to show you how, so the height is the set amount. So if you had all, let's say you have these same images, but they're all basically taken from images that are about a 2-to-1 ratio. So like 6x 3x2s or 6x4s or whatever. Then, or I should say a 3-to-2 ratio. So there are 3 inches wide for every 2 inches tall or something like that. So they're a little wider than they are tall. So we could change the image height, and you can do that with numbers. And the width is going to stay the same in this case, so the height will make it shorter and make it the wider images fit better. You can adjust the height. You can do that with numbers like I'm doing here, and then like I said, when you click away from the box you see it change. Or you can actually use this slider too, so you can play around with it until you see how it looks. The other thing that you have here is spacing between the images, and sometimes that's handy to have. It looks good, especially when you have all squares, and sometimes the spacing looks good. And I want to skip the title for a second because I want to talk about the width while we're in here, because we're already talking about the other part, and this is where this gets complicated. Sometimes you have something that's full width, and if it's full width, well, two things. One is when you click on full width, you'll see that that didn't really change anything in this case, and the reason is because my column, my row I mean, isn't a full width row. So in order for this to actually be full width, like it's touching edge to edge, I'd have to go to the row, edit design for the row, and do a full bleed row. I'm also on the row going to change the top and bottom spacing so you know that gap there. Or I could do this, go close, row, and one other thing, clear padding. There might be a little bit of a margin in that, but I'm not going to get, or didn't clear all the padding. Edit design, spacing. I did clear the spacing. There might be a margin for the photo gallery by default, but we'll get into that with spacing. So anyway, we go back to design. So you can see this is edge to edge, and what I wanted to explain about that is that is going to make it so that you won't know the exact size of the images ever, because depending on the size of the screen, it's going to change. So you resize the screen, they get narrower and narrower and narrower. So, but the height stays the same. So that's one of the drawbacks to that. If you have images where the cropping, the way they crop, really matters. And I should describe the cropping. You can think of it as it positions the image, and that's where that positioning thing comes in here. It positions the image, and so whatever is outside of the visible area, so if the size is going to be, pretend it's 2 inches by 1 inch, then whatever's outside of that area within that shape, without skewing the way that the image looks, will get cut off. And usually center works good, but if for some reason, like let's say this puppy here, or here the dog is probably a better example. If something where all the information's on the bottom, for instance, then you might switch it so that it's on the bottom. Would help if we could see the dog. There's the dog over here. And you can see it's counterintuitive. When you anchor the position to the bottom, then it actually made the dog go up. It's showing you more information on the bottom, because now you can think of the container here and all the information's up here that's being cropped off instead of it being all around. And the same thing left to right, you can position it. If most of the information is in the lower left, then you can put the arrow down there and it'll crop it so that it leaves the lower left and then crops everything in the upper and right area. Just something to play with. It's a little confusing, I know, sometimes, but something to keep in mind. So now we'll go back to the title style. You can see once we get to the title of the item here, which has the title and everything, then it automatically, when I highlight over it, it shows the title, because normally it only shows it when you hover over it. So you can change the font face. I wouldn't recommend changing the font faces necessarily unless they need to be changed to match your site. You can change the font size. You make it smaller, you make it bigger. You change all of them at once. You can change the font color. It's all pretty straightforward. You see that? You can make it bold. I don't recommend doing underline in general anything time on an, well, I guess on this it is technically a link, so you could put underline, but I don't know why you would. You can change the alignment, so you have a line on the left. And this is all the title. That's the first, big screen. The description, you can do the same thing with all of those. So you might make the description bigger so it's closer to the same size. The text decoration direction, I don't know why you would change that either, unless it's in a different language where it makes sense. The background is where you see how it's very light. So if I click on the background, what we see here is that it's selected on white, but then down here for the opacity, it's at 90%. So you can change that. Generally, if you're going to use dark text on it, you want to use a light light color, and then you play with the opacity to make it so that it stands out. See, I made it less opaque, so then you can see more of the image through it. And in the same regards, if I wanted to use light text, I could, change the text color for the description and for the title to white. You can see that that doesn't show up very well at all because of the background color. Turn the background color to black. When you change the color, it automatically puts it to 100% opacity, which would be like you can't see the photo at all. Drop this down to say 60. You can see how well the white text stands out. The caption padding has to do with when it'll end up wrapping, the text will end up wrapping around. And notice that on these things, and let's go back up to the top here too, like the image height, number of columns, a lot of the settings in this are device specific. Like this is only for the desktop. But when you see this little icon, it says switch for a different device. It means that these numbers might need to change on different devices. Then they might be different. We'll look at those towards the end. I would say too, if you do edge to edge, then you probably want the height to be pretty big, because like towards the large size of where everything's getting cropped, because some people's monitors are going to be ultra wide. So we go down the frame. Again, so we did full width. We checked that. We could, if we turn off full width, then it has the last width that was in there. So we could change the width to, whatever we want. Mark it back to full width. The background color right now, when it has that no smoking sign, it means that it's just invisible. It has no background. It's just picking up the background from the text. If you wanted in this case where we have like a 2-inch border in between them, if you wanted that to be a different color, the way you would do that is by changing the background color. So if you change the background color to blue, then that would be blue. Red. Most of the time you're just going to leave it transparent. you could also change the background color of the container that you're in, the row in this case, to have the same effect. Hover effect. Well, border here, so the border is on the frame it's time out, so you can see how that put a line around it. Most of the time I don't think you're going to do that, but if you want to, you can. You can just use this to change it, or you can make it 2 pixels or whatever. You can change the color over here. You can see it's not a border around each image, which actually is an option. I don't think we saw. I think I skipped something here. Description. That's under item. Title. Description. Oh yeah, there's a border for the image. So the other way, you could add distinction for the images is you could have a border for each image. You can see that actually puts it into here. Let's do this here. Let's make it white so it stands out a little more. Well, no, white won't work. Let's do a blue. I'll make it different than anything else here. And then we'll make it like 3 pixels. So you can kind of see it. I guess that only shows up with the hover on that one. But again, I wouldn't really think that you'd put a border in there. You can see it's no smoking and it's over to 0. Back to the hover effect. What the hover effect does is when you hover over it, it does something. In this case, it zooms in. It also has image animation. And the image animation is when it first loads. You see how it bounced in there. You can just play with these different ones and see how, if you want to have your photo gallery do one of these things. There's a lot of different options, and you just play with it and see what you like, or don't use any of them either way. All pretty cool. And they don't keep going, so they don't tend to be real annoying or anything. Spacing. So this is the spacing around the whole gallery. And that was what I was saying about how it has a white space up there, is it must have a margin. That's what this is. So I'd take that margin out if I was going to do it this way. And then that puts it right up against it. It has 2 inches there, 2 pixels there, because we have 2 pixels around each image. I should note too that the number of images that you have is going to affect how many columns you want to have, and also how many rows. So right now we have it set to all visible rows. You have the option, if you have, especially if you have a lot of images, you might want to do this, to have fewer rows. So let's say that I have these images here and I want to just have 3 rows. I have the 3 images, and then at the bottom it has view all, so that people can click and see the rest of them. Close this and do the preview here. You see it. View all. And see how it loads the rest of them. And you can see I have 3 times 4 is 12, 13 images. So that doesn't divide super easy. Actually, almost, I guess the best way would be 5 as far as giving you kind of a relatively even number of images. It also kind of leans towards one of the other designs potentially for that. But if you want to have something where all the images are the same, then you wouldn't want to use one of the tiled versions or something like that, probably. So that's the It's going back up to the layout and the number of visible rows. A lot of times you're going to use all, but if you have a lot of images, then you may want to do fewer and just have people click to see the rest of them. Now we'll look at a couple of these settings that change when you're in the different tools. So if I close out of this, or different formats, so that's tablet view. And it's worth clicking on these and looking at what they look like in tablet view. Make sure they still look okay. If you need to edit things in here, you can edit things. When it has these two icons like this, then that's an indication, and you can see they match the icons up here, that these changes affect both tablet and desktop users. So like this is just affecting tablets, the number of columns, and this is affecting both the image height, and this is affecting both. And you know, I know that you might look at that and go, well, how do I know it's not desktop and phone, because those icons look real close? It's never that. It's never desktop and phone. So anytime you see the two icons like this, it means it's desktop and tablet. And the tablet icon is wider, so like the number of columns, this happens to be just the tablet. But so this is handy because say you did a lot of columns for desktop users, because it's so wide, you can do fewer columns for tablets. Now let's look at mobile. Well, I should note too, where, I guess this is true on mobile too, so we can just use the mobile example, where on the desktop you might want this text to be pretty big as a caption underneath the image, then you probably want it to be smaller. So that's one of the good things about the design. You can see it has two columns in this case, and I might actually do one column for desktop, for mobile, but you can do either way. But like I said, you might want to adjust the title so it's not so big, and it already adjusted it some. It doesn't look too bad actually with the when it's not in two columns. Mine is kind of small. So you can see also how narrow this is. Either way, I'd probably also adjust the image height, and you can see it as the icon. It means that it's just the phone. You can play with those. I'm not sure if the spacing here, yeah, it looks like it has spacing on the top and bottom. It has the margin back again, and you can see here, I didn't notice the icon before, but that icon there tells me that that setting is only for smartphones. but I want it to be 0 there too. And actually the fact that it's not changing indicates to me that it's probably a different spacing, like the spacing in one of the containers. I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. It might be the row. So we try the row edit design spacing, and you can see it has a 15 pixel padding inside of it, which affects the stuff inside of it. The padding affects the inside of a container, and the margin, and it doesn't even say padding and margin on this, so I know what it is, but you can just look at this and say inside, outside, inside the container, outside the container. Now I notice it's not going up against the edges here, and that's probably because the column, which even when there's only one column, there's a column, is the other distracting part. To get to the column, this isn't always easy. I just clicked on the white area here, but you can also right click on something. Say you see the photo gallery, you want to right click on it and you're having trouble getting to the column. One of the options you have is select container, so you can, from there you can do container column, and then that brings up the column window, the column menu, and then on the column menu we can do edit design, spacing, and you can see that you have the 15 pixels on either side. And we're actually going to have to do one more thing, because the size was set for it to be have the 15 pixels. Oh, the full width doesn't affect mobile, so we weren't on full width anymore. So there you go, we have it laid out like that for mobile. Tablet or desktop, tablet, mobile. Now, as long as that video was with all the different information about photo galleries, I actually am going to do one more video after this that will show a trick for using, if you have a lot of different photo galleries, how to link to the different photo galleries. And I should also mention, I want to do this at the top, but I should also mention, if you want to do, other than the backing up the whole site, another trick you can do is, say I want to come in here and edit this gallery and I'm a little nervous about editing the gallery, then I can go in here and do copy the row. I can go to the row and copy the row, and then I can hit the row again and hit paste, and now I have 2 full copies of the gallery. So now I can edit this one on top, and if something goes completely wrong, I can just delete this row that I've been editing, and I still have the original here. So that's a trick for if you're editing something that's complicated and we have all these settings here, and you're worried about it, you can copy it. It doesn't show up, the changes don't show up until you hit republish. So you don't have to worry about people seeing your work as you go along. You can always hit preview to kind of see what's going on. But that's a trick for backing things up. And you can do the same thing with pages too. So say I have this page and I want to work on the page, and the page has a lot of rows. If it only has 1 row, I would do it that way, or even if it only had 2, I'd probably do it that way. But if it has a lot of rows, a lot of different things going on, then you can actually copy the whole page. Just do duplicate and create a duplicate page. and I would just call it, Photo Gallery 2. And then you'd have to drop it into place wherever the other one is after and rename it, and then delete the one that you had. This also makes it so that you could work on something if you really wanted to publish it, but that's a little trickier. So that's all for now. I appreciate your time. Hopefully that's been educational. Thanks.